Get off him! Get off him, please! Stop!
First of all, thank you everybody out there who's been waiting 3 years for us to come back. We're back. And man, this was a fun one.
For you.
Peacemaker Season 2 does a truly exceptional job of destroying much of what Season 1 established and accomplished. Christopher Smith, a comical parody of a low-rent Captain America knockoff in the self-checkout squad, goes on an unexpectedly poignant journey of redemption. Learning to appreciate his friends, his freedom, and different points of view, by the end of the first season, he has gained some self-awareness regarding his many, many flaws, and he has valiantly fought to protect Earth from an alien invasion, embraced Vigilante as his pal and sidekick, and through his unexpected friendship with Adebayo, proven he can outgrow his own prejudices. Peacemaker Season 1 was a showcase of James Gunn on sharper-than-usual form, bringing together a dysfunctional, troubled gang of ragtag characters and seeing them grow into a unit that saves the day. Sure, that's what basically every superhero project he does is about, following the same exact beats and likely having a slow-motion walk-together spot in the third act where everyone's a bit disheveled and exhausted. But this gelled a little more neatly than usual, benefiting from a crude R rating and the surprisingly compelling subversion of the hero's journey trope that the titular character goes on, overcoming his own villainous delusions of what makes a hero to actually become a hero by the end. The Christopher Smith character is brought to energetic, charismatic life by John Cena, whose muscle-bound physicality and penchant for self-deprecating comedy give this potentially absurd caricature a heart and three-dimensional presence, growing him into a likable, engaging character despite his flaws, and one whose journey into proper heroism is easy to root for. After 3 long years, the long-awaited Season 2 finally hit the small screens to a very different landscape. James Gunn was no longer a Snyderverse outlier, and Peacemaker was no longer in the DCEU. The Gunverse, the DCU, rich in washed-out, garish colours, quips, poorly rendered CGI and general goofballery, had blown in. Now where have we heard this description before? Considering the relatively hopeful ending of Peacemaker Season 1, one might have expected Season 2 to follow Peacemaker and the gang committing more fully to the heroic lifestyle and fighting the good fight, continuing to grow and find new strengths. Episode 1 turns this expectation on its head, with Peacemaker attempting to join the Justice League, or gang, as they're being called by old, bowl-cut Guy Gardner. The Justice League, traditionally, is the epitome of superheroics in the DC universe, where the cream of the crop in protecting Earth come together as one to fight the biggest threats, normally Darkseid, and stand tall. Here, however, we have 2 C-grade characters, plus James Gunn's brother goofing around, putting Peacemaker through an embarrassing audition process. Peacemaker is a joke to these people, and due to a contrived attempt at some painful cringe comedy, he gets to hear them thoroughly rinsing him as he attempts to stake his claim to being a worthy addition. The implication is clear. Not only is Peacemaker seen as an irrelevant clown despite his efforts since recovering from his self-checkout squad injuries, but the Justice Gang are clowns as well. This is a low-stakes, low-tension, low-pressure Earth full of wannabe comedic characters goofing around and reminding us all of just how silly everything is. Fighting the good fight and saving the day, in the absence of Superman or any other more lead-worthy characters, is a joke here. A world that cannot take itself seriously. Rejection is an essential theme of Season 2 as Peacemaker slowly slips into a bleak mode of thought as the world itself seems to be working against him at every turn. We of course have the Justice Gang throwing him under a bus, but we also have his relationship with Harcourt. It's quite clear watching Peacemaker that James Gunn might have 2 rather curious fetishes when it comes to his real-life trophy wife. One is seeing her all bloodied up, with frequent close-ups following fight scenes where her surgically enhanced face takes a jolly good beating. and the other is seeing her with taller, more handsome, more masculine, just generally more appealing men than himself, such as John Cena, and of course this season Joel Kinnaman as well. In Season 1, part of Peacemaker's growth as a character sees him see past his initial lust for Harcourt, from propositioning her for a one-night stand early on to genuinely caring for and respecting her as the show goes on. The Season 1 finale seems to hint at a more serious romantic angle in the future for the pair. Season 2 largely scuppers that pipe dream for Christopher Smith, as Harcourt seems determined to avoid discussing a mysterious moment that happened between seasons between them. Harcourt is her usual abrasive self, written as a bar-brawling man tragically trapped in a woman's body, sporting a toxically masculine, often aggressively hateful energy, rocking leather jackets, and steaming over not being able to get a new job in the world of espionage following the events of Season 1. She's a career woman, and one that still at least somewhat resents Peacemaker for taking out Rick Flag Jr.
Peacemaker. What a joke.
Season 2 wastes no time in gutting Peacemaker's most key objectives from the closing stretch of Season 1. Become a hero, rejected. Find love with Harcourt, again, rejected. And far from dusting himself off and moving on, Peacemaker simply crumbles, depressed, defeated, and lost. He fails to even enjoy a massive orgy hosted at his late father's house. Free love simply does not heal the growing hole in Smith's heart as he longs for something real, and his friendship with Vigilante has also noticeably taken a dive. With Peacemaker's oddball pal, now he's barely cared for manservant apparently, popping by to clean Smith's bodily fluids-soaked home. But we'll get to Vigilante later. In the midst of that Roman orgy of graphic nudity and excess, in a show that basically serves as a follow-up of sorts to that family-friendly Superman film that no doubt intended to acquire the interest of younger viewers, Peacemaker gets up and heads on over to an alternate universe. Much of the show's leading plot, if you can even call it that, rides off the back of the happenstance of Peacemaker and Eagly stumbling across a door to a world with a very different set of Smiths. Here, Peacemaker finds the world he always longed for, one where his brother actually made it into adulthood, and his father, far from the murderous, abusive fiend of Season 1, is actually a straight-laced, well-intentioned friend and mentor to his sons. The Smith home screams money, and the public at large adore all three as a trio of superheroes, protecting the innocent from absurd threats, such as a great big kaiju. A window opens when Peacemaker winds up inadvertently killing his alternate self, who holds him up with a gun and establishes himself as a kill-first, ask-questions-later kind of menace. The more time Peacemaker spends here after killing his alternate self, the more he gets a taste of a world a man such as himself can merely dream of in his own world. His efforts here are lauded as heroic. The public applaud his commitment to protecting them. His father loves him, his brother is his best bud, and we meet a far more conventionally feminine, gentle-natured Harcourt, skirt and all, who has a history with her world's Peacemaker that the one we follow exploits to finally live out his dream of a Harcourt romance. A relatively wholesome, conventional one, though, one with a Harcourt who doesn't go alone to bars to chug beers and lure unattractive men into hitting on her so she can whoop them into a bloody mess. Essentially, as his own world crumbles into disappointment and sub-mediocrity, Peacemaker has conveniently stumbled into a ready-made world of success and glory to replace it with. A lighter, brighter, more traditional setting, at a glance, of heroes and monsters, a dream world where the leading man in question gets to be a knight, a dragon slayer, and the one who gets the girl. Deep down, beyond TV, most men in the West, whether they want to consciously admit it or not, dream of a life of action. Bogged down and enslaved within the confines of wagey cuckoldry, pacified and defeated, taught from birth that the grandest traits they can exhibit are harmlessness and submission. The subconscious gets fat on escapism, from TV and film to video games, and the confines of real life, in an age where toxic masculinity is the big buzz phrase for anyone in possession of a pair of balls, just keeps getting tighter. Modern life is simply not fulfilling for most people, and it's only in getting a taste of a more traditional, more rewarding lifestyle that Peacemaker as a character finds any brief hint of, well, peace this season. In the meantime, the decision to move the series over to the new DCU with little to no explanation opens the floodgates for Peacemaker to finally face some severe consequences for killing Rick Flag. Rick Flag Sr., played by King of the Degraders, werewolf star Frank Grillo, is understandably miffed over his son's death and angling for revenge. Rick Flag Sr. represents a different generation of masculinity, arguably the final one where men were actually permitted to be leaders and tough guys without having to check some privilege or tick some box first. He's a war hero, and now large and in charge of Argus. Outside of his thematic value, however, Rick Flag Sr. is one of the biggest flaws in the show, as his personality, ethics, and objectives seem to change from episode to episode. Is he the tough war hero of the already largely forgotten Creature Commandos? Or is he the no-nonsense, by-the-books lawman of Superman? Or is he a cold, indifferent strings puller out to pacify the meta-human threat like Lex Luthor before him, like in this series? The consistency is non-existent. It is inconsistent. And it badly hampers the viewer's ability to absorb the character's motivations and the anguish surrounding his son's death. Regardless, for Peacemaker, Flag Sr. is a symbol of the fatherhood and leadership he lacked in his own childhood. Raised by a diabolically evil caricature of a Hicksville racist boomer, Peacemaker was not afforded the chance to have a healthy father-son dynamic or role model in his formative years. For Rick Jr., established as a sensible, grounded, dynamic leader and hero in the self-checkout squad before his unfortunate demise, having a father like Rick Sr. to look up to is implied to be a key aspect of his brave and orderly personality. Had Peacemaker, a man with a similar level of toughness and skill, had such a father growing up as well, it's likely he would have turned out a more sensible and dependable, law-abiding hero in his own right, rather than the aimless, troublemaking, violent lifestyle that netted him hard time behind bars. This Rick Sr. dynamic further hampers Peacemaker's hopeless potential romance with Harcourt, as her dynamic with Flag Jr. is expanded upon, and her ties to both Flags reveal another wedge between her and her goofy, muscle-bound quasi-love interest. Peacemaker and Rick Flag Jr.'s conflict stems from Flag's decision to out a major US government conspiracy involving human experimentation in the Banana Republic the film was set in. Peacemaker, believing such a decision will only cause unrest and destruction, ultimately kills Flag one-on-one. Despite serving the system in that moment, Peacemaker is never thanked for his actions by those he saved from a potential Hague-like trial. Instead, they attempt to use him as a lone shooter nut patsy in Season 1, and now as a punching bag for his actions in Season 2. The message is clear. Patriotic men prepared to fight for their country and put it ahead of themselves are expendable in a world that no longer respects or appreciates their efforts. Whether they're anti or pro-establishment in their views, the end result is the same in countries out to emasculate and ultimately replace them in time. Still using them as doomed cogs in the machine along the way, duping them into fighting for a nation and culture that barely even exists anymore, and is now being conditioned to despise them, spat on by both those who came before them and those coming in now. Peacemaker's dream world hits the right notes once again here, is where the man himself is a beloved public hero. Rick Flag Jr. is a stick in the mud, an awkward, insecure office drone at Argus, essentially just waiting for Christopher Smith to steal Harcourt back from him at any given moment. The dream world is just so delightful that even with the weight of having killed his alternate self from here, Peacemaker runs to it to be free from the weight of his past sins in his own world, and finally get a chance to live in denial of how poorly his life has turned out. Completely losing hope in his own Harcourt ever committing to giving him a chance, and receiving a ferocious beatdown from Flag Jr.'s quiffy old man, Peacemaker's departure from his own world is rich in checking out early symbolism.
And that's when I
decided to check out early.
Yes.
His goodbye note, focusing on his struggles in life and his dream of being with his lost loved ones in a better place, coupled with the largely heartbroken reaction from the rest of the 11th Street kids, rings of a self-inflicted death. Again, the themes of Peacemaker and the character archetypes he's written to satirize are clear. Such a man is no longer relevant to the modern world. A world of progress has no time for a backwoods soldier or an action man looking for a more patriotic time. Peacemaker is all but white trash wholly rejected at this point from almost every aspect of the modern world he's attempted to connect with since Season 1 wrapped. So irrelevant and unwelcome, in fact, that giving up completely and departing becomes an enticing option. Where Season 1 largely relied on Peacemaker's outdated, hammed-up notions of machismo and combat for laughs, and even some character development along the way, Season 2 applies this darker view, using Peacemaker to ultimately paint a masculine dream of a better life in the worst light possible.
Hans, are we the baddies?
In a twist heard around the television world several episodes before it was finally revealed in the show, Peacemaker's dream world stems from a very, very different end result for World War II. While Christopher Smith himself is blinded by saving the world, having a loving family, and finding a nice partner, things that would be appealing to almost anyone, it quickly becomes painfully apparent this new world is sorely lacking in the most important issue in the West today, apparently. Diversity. This is a world where that Austrian painter chap and his merry, stylish men, seriously, those Hugo Boss outfits were something else, won the war, and seemingly all of Earth, or near enough, fell under the shadow of the swastika. White supremacy has won the day, and the world around Peacemaker is low on crime, friendly, successful, hopeful, optimistic. Okay, What exactly were James Gunn and friends trying to say here? Peacemaker himself is simply too stupid, a middle-aged himbo to spot the endless visual clues, providing one of the few actually funny scenes in the whole season, as he starts looking around properly and seeing copies of My Struggle and artworks of Kanye West's favourite historical figure all over the shop. Peacemaker's dream is shattered, and it's incredibly fitting that the real Harcourt for him, the troubled, take-no-prisoners tough lady who don't need no man, who puts him through the emotional ringer on the regular, is the one to shatter his delusions. Immediately noticing the lack of diversity in this world before anything else. It is of course the job of the modern, typically liberal white woman, some, not all, to note and lambast when there's just too much of that white man presence in the room, which here of course has to mean the National Socialist Party. It is apparently for some reason that woman's duty to ensure that man checks that white privilege that somehow doesn't apply to them as well, as if they're not, on average, more pedestaled than any other demographic on Earth. And there's the nice bit of knife twisting as simple Peacemaker, a true idiot, more than anything outright evil this season, finally realizing his mistake, gets this little zinger stuck between his ribs.
This is your perfect world, huh?
You got me.
That's good stuff. Lead him around, break his achy, breaky heart, and then kick him when he's already so damn down he just went to another universe to try and move on from you. Lovely. Who's the villain here? What even is this show? The dynamic between these two is so frosty and awkward that when hints of an actual romance finally materialize, both in the present, starting with their little bike ride together in the Father World, and continuing back into that flashback where they kiss and all sing along to Foxy Shazam like it's some super well-known band, and we didn't all think that was a woman from the 80s singing in the intro. The result is lackadaisical and emasculating as Peacemaker, a once supposedly elite killer who saved the world from those brain bug invaders and shot his own evil father point-blank in conflict, jumps around and celebrates like a hormonal teenager when Harcourt hits him with a hint that maybe, just maybe, they might be together someday, or something along those lines. Who knows? Talk about mixed signals. Let's sum up. Peacemaker represents a very particular kind of man, a golly gosh white man, a working-class patriot, and a square-jawed, masculine protagonist. But he's also a buffoon. Many of his actions and comments make the more enlightened folks around him uncomfortable as he comes to represent a rock-and-roll, jingoistic lifestyle from yesteryear and a temperament that must be stamped out of the modern world. Beyond patriotism, he's steeped in sexist and racist undertones that, while addressed and downplayed as the show goes on, still very much paint him as a man of the past. A politically incorrect fool with no place in the modern, sensible world. An exaggerated symbol of a media trope of the outdated, no longer necessary unless of course it's wartime, square, lame, inappropriate, white guy. And Peacemaker's dream world, from his perspective, is merely a low-crime, low-stakes, high heroics and adventure world. Full of conventional male and female roles and archetypes in the workplace and society where the family unit is strong and he's able to contribute meaningfully to society, protecting those in need from otherworldly dangers in tandem with his beloved brother and father, whilst enjoying a conventional, loving relationship with Harcourt. The reveal of that alternate universe's true, sinister nature carries a bleak message, that to even want these features in the society in which you live carries with it extreme political ideologies that make you a danger to the current world and the people around you. A delusional remnant of a long-dead enemy the media has never moved on from, all while largely glossing over the countless atrocities and monstrosities of that enemy's opposite, but similarly evil rivals from the East. There is no room for mainstream villains based on Stalinist or Maoist movements anymore, only the little mustache guy and his racial fanatics. And that's not to defend the swastika people or the war crimes they committed, just to be clear. It is simply to note a growing creative bankruptcy throughout Hollywood, and more importantly a growing dissatisfaction in the real world with the myth of World War II. Much of our society today began to be shaped in the aftermath of the war as the counterculture and pop culture took hold, and the baby boomers took and guaranteed dead and struggle tenfold for every generation to follow. Those who fought and lived through the war and stood for the merits of fighting it are gone now, and we're left with a grim, grimy future of dwindling pay for longer hours and a system of wage slavery, forced to abide by rules and expectations of a world none of us actually asked to be born into. As scammers, dealers, and OnlyFans slags, there I said it, enjoy cushy lives and world leaders hang out on Vladimir Nabokov-themed islands. And constantly we are reminded that all these blokes fought and died so we could have these shrinking freedoms. Not to mention all those forever wars, debt, rainbow warriors, and cancellations for anyone who dares to even hint that they're not 110% happy about all of it. There was a time where to even vaguely question the World War II narrative or to disrespect certain groups quite heavily affected by the war, who then seemed to disproportionately represent key figures in the media, banking and other important sectors, to even hint at any issue in these regards was to throw your life away and be buried 6 feet under for your bigotry. And your insanity, you're clearly delusional. More and more people every day are just not really caring to the same level anymore. Earlier this year, Kanye West dropped his latest LP, aptly named Cuck. Suits him very well. And in between revealing he used to blow his cousin apparently, and looking towards that ever closer World War III, old Ye had a track that turned some heads. We'll just call it Double H, no worse than the triple. West is not the star he once was. He is not popular now the way he used to be, and he has been under fire for many years now for daring to use his right to free speech to say whatever the hell he pleases, upsetting many groups with his brash, angry, questioning, accusatory rhetoric.
By a, I'm not going to say what race, what people, doctor, and what hospital, and what media went to. We know I can't say that. It was a
raising eyebrows with his seeming sympathies to certain extreme ideologies from the 20th century, and in the process losing out on business profits, and even having his bank accounts closed. All just for saying a few idiotic, controversial, nonsense statements that went against the mainstream grain way too much. Now this song, by design, obviously, is quite provocative. busting into a chorus that sings the praises of the 20th century's most despised villain. Presumably West was aiming for controversy and notoriety, a shock value track that would heat up interest in his work whilst also bringing his real-world sentiments and frustrations into his music, as he discusses his unfortunate cuckoldry kink.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Mel time.
Why did I say this?
Mel time. It's Mel time.
And demolished bank accounts along the way. Here's the thing. While the mainstream press and music critics and cancel mobs threw great big hissy fits about this song, trying to get it cancelled and scrubbed from reality, the general public just don't seem to care. In fact, far from angry, many people just seem to find it funny. A silly song that launched 1,000 memes, not to be taken seriously. Something to shake your head at and have a little chuckle over, rather than bang the table and rage about. People are just not caring anymore like they used to, and when your life is aimless and inescapable, it's inevitable more will question official narratives and historical slants, wondering why everything became so rubbish along the way. Questions a sane, settled, safe mind would never feel the need to ask. So shows like Peacemaker have to remind you, using once funny characters, like Peacemaker, that the world could have been a lot worse if the designated good guys in a conflict, largely funded by similar parties on both sides, hadn't won. You cannot fully enjoy TV anymore. You must be lectured, even in a D-grade superhero action comedy series, apparently. And as a man, you can't have a nice old-fashioned dream world to daydream about, apparently. Somehow that can only exist if a psychotic, white supremacist regime are large and in charge. So get with the program. Traditional masculinity is evil. Being patriotic, no thank you. Unless the powers that be need you to die in a pointless war overseas, in that case go for it. A conservative, family-focused society? Burn in hell, swastika scum! And the final episode of Season 2 really hammers home the out-of-place, increasingly atomized man's symbolism of Peacemaker, as he becomes an afterthought in his own show. Huddled in a deep depression separate from much of the finale's multiversal action, just wanting to be alone and away from the pain he both causes and endures. And when his friends and some other supporting characters work with him on creating Checkmate, just as Peacemaker finally begins finding some peace, Flag Sr. gets his revenge, ditching the killer of his son on the mysterious prison world in waiting for the world's countless metahumans.
This is for Ricky. You piece of shit.
The final time we see Peacemaker in this show perfectly encapsulates what he represents, a mockery of a bygone era of men, no longer welcome in the modern world, left behind in a void as those around them move on and succeed in their absence. Now, a video on this subject matter is simply not complete without a look at the other side of Season 2's coin in the oddly underutilized Vigilante. Season 1 revealed him as a dangerous, psychopathic vigilante who hero-worshipped Peacemaker and established a strong friendship with his idol over the course of the season, despite being an oddball with a likely unfulfilling life as a 30-something busboy. Vigilante was also tough, dangerous, committed, and brave, relishing in the bloodshed and mayhem of the action on offer in the show. He also proved to be an oddly free-spirited figure beyond his unrepentant attitude to murder for even the most minor of crimes. From ruthlessly roasting the White Dragon and his prison cronies' cultural double standards to engaging in a threesome with Peacemaker and his briefly kidnapped admirer in Season 1 in a scene where it's so clearly not the current actor playing Vigilante but the one they fired before him. In Season 2, however, he's largely an irrelevant dweeb to begin with, getting little screen time, no development, and largely backtracking on any growth or established strengths from the first season. Here, Vigilante is a painfully awkward, sexless figure, being brought into Peacemaker's home as a clean-up man rather than a guest, and frequently alluding to his revulsion at the idea of human physical contact, beyond at least the violent sort he relishes in his crime-fighting life. Far from the assassin who hummed a happy tune while sniping a whole family, Vigilante here is aimless and oddly infantilized. It's frequently emphasized that he still lives with his mother, leading to the painful reveal that he fibs incessantly about a non-existent love life with Harcourt. Begging, of course, the question of what else he makes up to seem more human in his mother's eyes day to day. And despite being past 30 and living with the old bag, Vigilante frequently expresses an incredibly childish hatred of her, like an angry 11-year-old 3 days into a 2-week grounding. Between his hopeless man-child lifestyle and his violent tendencies, Vigilante represents a different type of unwanted man trope. The basement-dwelling incel. Despite Freddie Stromer being a fairly handsome guy, not that I've put much thought into such things.
I am not gay. I have relationships with women. And sex with women.
And Vigilante being more of a brash, dangerous psychopath in Season 1, here, he's an emotional, insecure, immature mess incapable of flying the nest. Constantly in the background, saying little of note, being given little room to spread his wings, Vigilante quietly represents the reject, the shooter, the forgotten white guy at the back of the classroom who could snap at any moment on all the normies and Chads and Stacys and whatever other terms these people come up with these days. When his hero Peacemaker, who was even his pal for a short spell, checks out of their world, Vigilante is a crying, blubbering mess. A friendless, out of touch with reality, sad case, and when the gang move over to the Austrian Painterverse to bring Peacemaker back, Vigilante's meeting with himself is a surprisingly rich study in loneliness. While the others putter about and get into trouble, Vigilante actively seeks himself out, taking great glee in discovering this alternate take on his own home. Once again, in dear old Mummy's basement, he finds his alternate self, and despite Vigilante's dangerous, distrusting temperament, both versions are absolutely thrilled to meet the other. There is a childish joy in the scene as they get on like a house on fire, sharing countless similarities as one would expect, and thoroughly enjoying each other's company. The message is clear. Someone like Vigilante must settle for his own company in life. Whittling away the hours at a meaningless, low-paid job, never escaping the authority of his parents' home, lashing out in his downtime at a world that never even stopped to take a look at him. He will never outgrow this perpetually adolescent state, unable to connect with others in a mature human way, unable to escape his own clueless, childish temperament, living in a murderous fantasy world when he's not being beaten down by the everyday nuances of modern life. If Peacemaker is a mockery of a has-been generation of men, Vigilante represents something even sadder, the never-was generation of men. Two action-comedy characters who were big hits with viewers just 3 years ago, now reduced to two bleak, hopeless stereotypes often thrust upon white men in particular, both suggesting out-of-place, dangerous, ultimately unwanted figures that society must move on from and reject so that brighter, wiser, less pale, less male, less stale figures can take the reins and do everything better, apparently. So, beyond any identity politics, or lack thereof, of course, this show simply wasn't very good. I rewatched Season 1 before making this video, and the differences in tone, energy, plotting, humour, and character development are night and day. Season 2, beyond being a shameless, cash-grabbing commercial for future DCU projects no one is all that fussed about, does a disservice to its own established lore and character arcs, where Season 1 has a clear-cut beginning, middle, and end story that climaxes in the finale with a satisfactory ending. Season 2 has a sort of ending to a disorganized mosaic of half-baked plotlines and ideas in the penultimate episode. Before a finale that's equal parts music video and ads for some sort of Salvation Run adaptation down the road. Superhero fatigue is painfully real now, and putting these mad, not quite genius creators in charge will not save the day for the MCU or this fresh, disorganized DC knockoff of it. That will likely be swallowed up anyway in whatever the next Warner Brothers merger is one of these days.